I'm Catherine Arndt, the Chief of the VLGA Connect Studio. Welcome to today's episode, brought to you by the VLGA, your councillor support network and the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Hello, welcome back to VLGA Connect. It's time for another edition in our Local Leaders series. And we're heading up to the Murray today to talk with the Mayor of Campaspe Shire Council, Councillor Rob Amos. Rob, welcome.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks for having me.
Good to have you here and good to see you again. It's been a busy mayoral term, a busy year in Campaspe. You probably had no inkling of what was in store for you when you put your hand up for mayor, I'm guessing.
It's certainly been an interesting year. Really lots and lots of challenges, particularly for the Shire and our residents. But I've got to say, it's been, from my point of view as mayor, it's been a really great learning experience. I've been thrown into some situations that I've had to learn really quickly, particularly as it is my first year as mayor, and which is I love challenges and learning experiences. So from that point of view, yeah, it's been good.
It's your first term as a councillor as well, am I right?
Yep, that's correct.
So the learning curve, I guess, has been double-fold then for you to get to know how council works and then to be the leader.
That's right. So, I came on council during COVID, as a lot of other councillors have and so on, which was an experience in itself, and dealing with sometimes meeting in face-to-face, sometimes over video conferencing, and then last year was looking good, and then in October we were hit with the floods. And this year has been the recovery process.
Yeah, so very much that whole recovery process has happened on your watch, and we've talked to you on a panel about the challenges there, and you expressed some frustrations at the time about, I guess, the processes and the systems. They weren't moving quickly enough. There was a lack of clarity. How do we sit some months on in that respect?
It's not exactly where it needs to be. We have had a lot of progress, and there's been a lot of discussions with a lot of different people, both federally and state, who get things moving. And again, this is a big learning experience for me, that different funding for different things. So one of the great things that we've got is our flood recovery hub, which is now fully funded and opened as of the 1st of July. I sit there and I go, perhaps we should have been opening that in January or February, but anyway, it's open now, and we had temporary ones happening before that, but that is now fully funded for the next 2 years, which is awesome. We work very closely with our neighbouring shires as well. Some of them are bigger than us, and some of them are smaller than us, and still trying to navigate through the DRFA funding and getting our roads and assets back to where they need to be.
When realistically do you think you will be on top of all of that? Because there's a lot to do, isn't there?
It will still be a long period of time. I was the CEO from Gunnewarra Shire. He talks about the incredibly small number of roads that they have repaired. We are not a wealthy shire by any means, but we have some capacity to themselves and then claim back, but a lot of our smaller neighbours do not have that capacity. Some of their repair works are 5 and 6 times their rate base, so they just do not have that capacity. It's not as simple as it should be. And the conversation we have is to say, that there needs to be more trust. There needs to be more, let the councils go. We talk about the one we often bring up is the Roads to Recovery funding. They give us the funding and they say, go and fix your roads, do what you want to do. And whereas there's a whole lot of requirements, and there's arguments both ways about how that should work.
How do you feel about your capacity to respond, should there be, heaven forbid, another event? Because we keep being told that these extreme weather events are going to be more and more regular.
It's a big part of what we're doing at the moment, and our emergency management plan is in the process of being rewritten. So it probably was not where it needed to be. The last big event was 11 or 12 years before, so it's a long time between events, and I would say that it wasn't where it needs to be. So that is being rewritten so that we are ready for the next event. And I was at a meeting with some health professionals yesterday, and that was the conversation. And it's not necessarily about a big flood, particularly with climate change, and particularly up here over summer, we're specifically talking about heat events. So which as we all know, are sometimes more dangerous than big fires or big floods. They can kill more people than, so it's about being prepared for those type of events, and how do we work with our local health agencies to be better prepared.
Am I right that you've got a background in emergency management before you became a councillor?
Yep, I was served in the Army Reserve for 10 years, and I was also a volunteer firefighter for 12 years and captain of the local fire brigade in Echuca.
So is that in your mind a natural progression to go from that to being a councillor, or what was part of that decision-making process?
I would say that was not in my thought process.
Right.
never even crossed my mind. Look, I think I was one of those ones that didn't know what council did. Had no thought process about joining council, and got a knock on the door, and it took a couple of months to make a decision. I run my own business. I was captain of the fire brigade at the time. There was a whole lot of things going on, so I had to make that decision, and I did, and I'm very happy that I did. It's been an amazing experience for the last 2.5 years.
I'm really curious to know, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. You say you got a knock on the door. So was that a community-minded person? Was it another councillor, someone that recognised the potential in you? There
was I guess, a concerted effort, which I knew nothing about, to have to make some change at council. And so there was a group of people who wanted to put some hands up, and my name was obviously in some discussion somewhere, and put into the mix. And that's
right.
That's how it came about. So.
And what was your initial reaction to that?
As I said, I was very surprised. I would suggest through my life and my family, we're very community minded, always out and about doing stuff, whether it's my wife at school, as I said, fire brigade, I was in the Army Reserve, but lots and lots of other things as well. And so that's just normal. That's nothing special. It's just a normal part of life. And then to be asked to go on council was okay. So it was a surprise. And as I said, I did have to think about it for a little while. But when I did, I made the decision that if I'm going to do this, I'll go as hard as I can.
So I am interested in that thought process. So you go from being surprised, nothing you'd ever considered, to thinking, yeah, okay, I'll give this a go. But what moved you to the position of thinking it might be for you?
I hate this saying, I hate it, but it seemed like a natural progression onto doing something else. As it was. Maybe it's quite a big jump, I would argue, but if someone from another organisation had come and knocked on my door and said, hey, do you want to come and be part of this? Maybe that would have been where I would have gone. I don't know the answer to that. So it seemed like a great opportunity, really great opportunity, a bit naive, I don't know, but then you got to run an election campaign. You go, I have no idea what that is, and then it's COVID, so you have to run an election campaign in COVID, and all those sort of things. So it was a great challenge, really great challenge to go through that whole process as well. So,
have you always been in the Campaspe region?
No, I've only moved to Echuca 7 years ago, so nearly 8 years ago. 8 years ago at the end of this year.
So where did you come from?
Well, I've actually lived all over Australia, but my previous time I lived in Croydon in Melbourne, so Maroondah Council. But I've lived in northern New South Wales, Moree, Darwin, lived in an Aboriginal community off Arnhem Land for 3 years back in many decades ago. Lived in Robinvale, Hamilton, so all over the place.
Okay, well travelled. And is Campaspe it for you now? You're settled?
My wife and I looked at each other one day about 8 years ago and just one morning and said, is this the rest of our lives? I was living in Croydon and driving to Malvern every day. I've got my own business, had my office there. She was driving to like Box Hill from Croydon. It was like, is this the rest of our lives? And my daughter was in grade 4, just the daily commute just seemed like a grind. Everything was exactly the same every day. And we'd done a bit of holidaying up here, and we said, let's go and have a look. And we came up and looked at what work opportunities were and that sort of thing, and schools and so on. And 6 weeks later, we were living here. And it's provided so much opportunity for my family, and we've met so many wonderful people. And this is even way before council. So this is just it has been such a fantastic move for us. It's just an incredible area.
Sounds like a great advertisement to come and live on the Murray you're in Echuca or somewhere else in Campaspe?
In Echuca, yeah.
Yeah. So thinking about that time where you've made the decision to run for council, you've obviously had to think about a campaign for the first time and the sort of change that you wanted to effect. Talk to me about what you were hoping to do and where you're at now that you're in the mayoralty.
Again, I really didn't have a clue. And I look back at some of the stuff I campaigned on, which was absolutely nothing to do with council. So it might have been Vic Track or this.
Yes. Did you know that at the time?
No. Yeah. And you couldn't really, I mean, you could talk to people on the phone, but you couldn't meet with people and say, hey, what do we do for a campaign and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, I decided to do mine all electronic, you know, made a couple of call flutes, but effectively my whole campaign was on Facebook, and did some paid advertising on that, and which I found very effective actually. And I think that is the way of the future. You know, because we just weren't allowed to meet with people or anything like that. So, but you know, it's the thing when you're not looking to go on council, and someone says go on council, and then you've got a campaign on things. So we need footpaths, we need better roads. You know, that just the things that all that sort of stuff. But then I'd be going, we need this thing down at the railway station, and you know, so it was kind of funny.
So how much of that have you been able to influence then, since you've got a seat at the table?
You can make a difference. It's quite you can make a difference. And so what sort of, you know, one of my things has been around footpaths and shared pathways. We have a very old network right across our shire, and that's been a priority for me, but also my fellow councillors as well. So we've put a lot of money towards that over the last 2.5 years and continue to do so. And you learn what the problems are. You know, I look at roads, for example, and this is the difference between regional and rural councils and metropolitan. So I look at our road network, which is over 4,000 kilometres, of which around 3,000 kilometres is gravel or dirt. And then I look where I came from, Maroondah Council, and they've got 480 kilometres of roads, which is all bitumen. And you know, we spend about 38% of our budget on roads. They spend about 9%. So these sort of different challenges between city and country. That's just part of it. There's no right or wrong there. It's just a fact. And so you know, we look at those sort of things. And but once you get into council, you do learn where the things are that are working and perhaps not working. And you know, when I came on council, I thought we needed to change pretty much our culture was the thing that needed to change. So you can build all the shiny new things, and you know, that makes people happy, and that's fine. But unless you're providing a great service to your community, then sometimes all that other stuff doesn't really matter.
And of course, since you've come on council, your previous CEO stood down. You had to seek a new CEO. Was that a process that you saw yourself being involved in?
Absolutely, and the whole council was, and that was the fabulous part about it. And we were all on the same page. So when we were employing Pauline, we were looking for someone who was going to go out and talk to the community. So we weren't looking for someone who was great at infrastructure or great at finances or anything like that. What we were really after was a person who could go and wrap their arms around the community and say, hey, come and have a conversation with us and tell us what you can do. And Pauline was just a standout, and she's been absolutely amazing. And for a woman who ran for quite a period of time with no directors, and then we've got all them on board now finally, so which has been great. Her ability to get out to the community and just talk to people is amazing. So.
And for some insights into that, for those watching or listening who haven't seen it yet, there's an earlier episode of Local Leaders where we talk about those challenges with Pauline Gordon, the CEO there. Rob, as we record this week, I notice Strathbogie Shire has come out making a pretty strong statement that they would like to see money that would have been spent on the Commonwealth Games prioritised towards roads and bridges across rural and regional shires. Given the comments you were just making about roads, I imagine you'd be fully in support of that position.
Absolutely. So, you know, that's Commonwealth Games, very disappointing, but that's happened. So we need to move on from that. We do want to make sure we get our fair share, you know, and even if they're not spending it on council roads, because, you know, state network is intertwined with the council network, and they're just not in a great shape at the moment. There's so much money required to repair roads and bridges is another one, and bridges that were built 60 and 70 years ago that they may still be even okay as a bridge, but their capacities are not where they need to be in this day and age. Heavier trucks and farm equipment and so on. So we will never say we've got too much money for roads or bridges.
I guess it's going to be a wicked problem making that money go around across regional Victoria. What else would you like to see it spent on?
So, well, we're actually right in the midst of doing our economic development and tourism strategy. And as I said, the Commonwealth Games was going to be, while we didn't have any events here, we sat right in between Bendigo and Shepparton, which were both having events, which was going to be such an amazing opportunity for us to showcase Campaspe Shire. You know, we knew those towns did not have capacity for accommodation so we knew there was going to be spillover, and plus we were already great at tourism. So we'd love to see some of that money directed towards tourism and events for us, so that we can continue that journey. Housing, obviously, we know there's money going towards housing. We know there's acute housing shortages everywhere, but we want to at least get some of that pie as well. So to get more, we need social and affordable housing. There's no doubt about that, but we also just need normal housing as well. So how we can get our planning scheme to encourage more of that, and we're looking at what we can do as a shire to encourage whatever that looks like over the next few years.
Are you across the Operation Sandon recommendations, which everyone's expecting, if adopted, will have some significant impacts on the planning responsibilities or powers of councils?
A bit. So I read the reports and I watched your podcast the other day and so on. So look, some of it I think is okay. Some of it I think goes too far. Some of it I actually don't think is good for democracy. And we have to be very careful when bureaucrats write these reports that democracy is really important. And some of it I thought took a little bit of power away from the elected officials, which we have to be really careful about, because that's what democracy is, and which is really something that I'm really passionate about. So let's look and see what happens. It's hard to guess where it's going to be. It's just come out as recommendations, and we'll see what the government comes back with, and we will put our submissions in to say what we believe they should look like.
Yes, we're all watching and waiting with interest. Let's go back to tourism. You talked about that before, and you've had a bit of media coverage recently about the loss of the Visitor Information Centre, and what I thought was some rather conflicting messages in the press coverage, and even the local MP took a bit of a whack at you about that. Do you want to set the record straight on what's actually happening there? Yeah,
so Visitor Information Services, we are investing more money in tourism than we ever have. We've just employed a tourism development manager. Our Port of Echuca area had literally millions of plus dollars put into it. And visitor information, the way visitor servicing is done, we think needs to change. And we have a visitor information centre that services, on the stats that we get told, around 4 to 5% of our visitors. And it costs literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to run between our council and the Moama at Murray River Council across the river. I use the example that we recently had our Winter Blues Festival, which is the second biggest blues festival in Australia, over a weekend, 2 or 3 weekends ago. And I think someone said, there was 500 or 600 people that visited the visitor centre over that weekend. If you go, that's really good. That's really busy. But then you go, there was 25,000 visitors that came to the twin towns over that weekend. How are we servicing the other 24,500 visitors? And that's the way we need to look at things. The world is moving towards digital. There will always be the need for a physical presence. We fully accept that, and that there will have to be some physical presence and telephone and so on, because there are some people that won't use digital, but the majority of people are using digital these days. And if we try and still service the really small minority, we're going to miss out on that really the majority who want to be serviced digitally. I use the example. My father who is nearly 80, has just got back from overseas, 5 weeks in England and a bit of travel in Europe. He booked the whole thing online before he went. So,
Wow.
So that's the world we're moving towards.
The world is changing, but it's so hard to affect some change, isn't it? When people are so wedded to the status quo. I remember someone saying once, a public figure, that when did it become impossible to have a debate about a new idea, because people just want to whack it down the minute you say something, don't they? You must feel that in your public role.
I do, but one thing I've really learned, Chris, is that you are elected to govern for everyone, and you can get into the trap of listening to just the very small number of very loud voices, and it's not saying you do not listen to them. In fact, I've got a meeting today with someone about that visitor centre, which I'll have exactly the same conversation with. But we are elected to make decisions for everyone, and what is the best. Will some people not be happy with that? Of course they will, and but as I said, I have learnt that those that are opposed to things will get on Facebook and ring you up and all that sort of thing, and that's fine. And I accept every phone call, and if people want a meeting, I'll sit down with them and talk to them. I have no problems at all. But I also get the people who come up to me and give me a bit of a nudge and say, "Hey Rob, keep going. We're happy with what you're doing." And so they do it very quietly, and they do it in the background. And so you have to govern for everyone, not just the loud minority. And it's not saying the loud minority is not sometimes right. That can be the case, but they are not always right.
Do you read all the social media stuff?
I wouldn't say I read it all. We don't get a lot of nasty stuff anyway, so it's not a major problem. And again, a wise man once told me, when you are listening to someone say something about you, whether it's good, bad, or whatever, look at that person and say, do I respect that person? And if I do, I will value your opinion. If I have no respect for you, then I couldn't care less what you say.
Words to live by. So is this, I ask everyone this question, Rob, is being a councillor and potentially mayor again, is this a long-term thing for you now? Is it in the blood? I
love it. I absolutely love it. It's I love being a councillor, and since I've been elected mayor last year, I love it even more. I love what I do. It's very, very busy, particularly I think this year with our floods recovery stuff. Absolutely love it. And I talk about I've been to Canberra and sat in some offices of some very, very senior ministers and discussing stuff about advocacy for flood, but a whole lot of other stuff. And this afternoon, I'm heading out to Kyabram, and I'm meeting with the under-12 Kyabram local athletics club, and I love that just as much. And you sit down with those kids, and they've got a grant for some new hurdles for their club that the Shire's given them, and that's such an awesome thing to do as well. So this is the expanse of what you get to do in your job. It's just fabulous.
So I'm assuming then you'll be running again next year, and I'm wondering what your election campaign is going to look like compared to the last one.
I have no idea. I really have no idea.
You haven't thought that far ahead.
Look, but to be perfectly honest, it'll be mostly digital again. It's the way of the world. People. One thing someone told me when you're going to be elected, and this was someone who had been elected into federal government, and said to me, when you're going to an election campaign, he said to me, this is a Facebook, you need to do 2 or 3, and I thought he was going to say Facebook posts a week, and he said per day. And he said, the bottom line is they need to know who you are, and they need to think you're a pretty good person. And if they know your name and they think you're going to do right things for their community, then they will. You're a pretty long way down the track. So
good luck.
Thank you.
With all of that, and what's to come between now and then, of course, because you've got the rest of your mayoral term and a lot of challenges, as we've discussed, to deal with. Rob, it's been great to have you on Local Leaders. Thanks so much for your time and for the insights.
No worries, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity.
That's Councillor Rob Amos, the Mayor of Campaspe Shire Council, our guest today on Local Leaders from VLGA Connect.